Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Finding Truth Everywhere. This is an open door. Last time I checked, people are still calling me Cindy. I kind of like that moniker for as long as I continue to wear it. I'm not going to pretend I can pronounce this beautiful man's name, but we did get a primer this week in the podcast on Vedanta, and my intention here today is to play a song. And then to highlight just a few things. I have pages and pages of notes, so I have no worry of long, quiet spaces, but I have a sense that we'll all see things differently. And I know Amy really sunk in to this podcast based on my memory of what she told me. So I'm going to share for a few minutes some highlights that um, I found very useful for me. And then I'm going to hand things over to Amy, and then we're going to open it up to see what y'all thought. Yeah. So let's start with a song. Our little roomie. Here we go.
Love story. Something stirred deep inside of me, a quiet ache I couldn't name, like I was calling but forgot who to be. I searched in faces, passing shadows, in every place my eyes could see, not knowing I was chasing echoes of something living inside of me. Every road I walked felt empty, every door led back to you, but I was blind in all my searching to the love that always knew. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere, they were never torn apart. Was already in my heart. Through every life, through every silence, through every dream I wandered through, I was looking for a stranger, but I was only finding you. I trace your name in silent prayers and broken nights and morning light, in every tear that fell unnoticed, in every wrong that felt so right. I thought that love was something distant, a place where lost souls go to find, but every step that I was taking was leading deeper into my own mind. Every longing had a meaning, every loss was pulling near. What I feared was just a doorway to the truth already here. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere, they were never torn apart. Was already in my heart. Through every life, through every silence, through every dream I wandered through, I was looking looking for a stranger, but I was only finding you. Not in the stars, not in the oceans, not in the places left behind. You were written in my breathing, in every corner of my mind. I crossed the world to reach your presence, just to realize in the end there was no distance left between us, no beginning and no end. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere, they were always side by side. Every search was just a journey back to what I held inside. Through every loss, through every lifetime, through every tear that felt so true, I was looking for forever, and forever was always you. The moment I heard my first love story, I began looking for you, not knowing I was already home.
Thank you for experiencing that with me. And I do want to, I was looking to see if John was in the room. I do want to confess that I am in the midst of a pretty loud experience. And by that, I just mean this body is really uncomfortable. And oh, see, I said it and then John showed up. How do you like that? The body is really uncomfortable. And I have noticed that up until this point anyway, it has not affected me in the least. That was actually the contemplation question. You know, what part of the body can ever limit the divine, ever limit who I am? I've been asking that since early this morning. And I've noticed that I've walked and I've moved and I did my diet and my contemplation and my meditation, and the body's doing what it's doing. But if for some reason I seem somewhat different, um, I'm having an experience that some would label fairly intense pain. So it's fun. We'll see what happens. And it leads to the first point um, that I wrote on my notes, which is there is no progress in a comfortable life. That's the way he put it. And when I work with David Jiam in Kabbalah, he literally says, go on vacation. Just don't expect to make any progress there. It's when the world hits you, when you sit in the stillness and accept it as a gift. See, Sandra in Kabbalah, they call it a gift. And you accept it as a gift and you wait for the divine to come and move through you and release you of that obstacle. That's where the progress is made. Michael Singer, who I now love, um, he taught me um, that if you want to heal, you get comfortable with pain. It's not, we don't want to push down the fear. We want to get really comfortable with feeling the emotions and the experiences and the fear and whatever else is here. If we start telling it, if we start questioning the experience and telling the experience it's wrong and it's got to go, then it's never fully expressed. And actually, even Lisa Natoli has been going around for the last X number of years talking about her story of welcoming. The guides, I've often heard them say, the experience you're having is productive, and productive doesn't always mean fun. So all that to say, I heard that in this teaching too, The being present with what is does not equate to what the egoic mind would call necessarily an easy life. Though there could be a lot of ease and effortlessness. There are challenges, there are obstacles, there are opportunities, there are gifts in the way of intense moments and times and experiences. And even, as the Course say, if you but only knew that everything was perfectly planned by one who loves you, this understanding of taking whatever is happening in this moment in this experience and unpacking it and calling it for what it is, an opportunity to step into myself, to hold more love, whatever. Like the verbiage is what's the knowing how many different ways to say it is what's leading me to the second point, which I very much appreciated in his teaching. And it's actually also probably why I love the Vasista Yoga so much. What he said was the multiplicity of viewpoints are all correct, and a balanced spiritual life has all paths. And there are a number of different paths within the yogic tradition, right? But it just, even in general, all these different voices. So he did take the time to speak about the importance of understanding, he called it intellectual. My buddy Joe Goldsmith calls it the Word of God. It's important that you have the intellectual verbiage, technical, conceptual understanding of these teachings. That's a valued and important part of the path. Um, and it does, and someone like Byron Katie is a good example of saying it doesn't really matter when you get it. Like when she had her full-blown awakening experience, she had no verbiage for any of it. And then she ends up marrying a man who translated all the ancient texts as for a living, right? And so they still managed to merge the experience with the verbiage with Stephen Mitchell, right? Which is an extraordinary thing. So the intellectual aspect of the path is valuable, as is devotion. He talked about the importance of devotion and inquiry and meditation and action. And I loved how I was listening to him and I was sitting and I was both just honestly looking at my own life and what we do here in an open door and realized we really do honor all of these paths, right? The intellectual, we read our books and we talk about our concepts. We are all learning in various ways to love the word God and the word prayer and understand that there is faith involved in the work we do. We do meditations. We did true meditation. We do satsang on Wednesday nights. I sit and meditate. Many of us sit in meditation every day. Inquiry, like who here doesn't do inquiry now, right? I do it in the dyads every day, but we have people like Melanie and people like Amy and others who ask these inquiry questions of all of us all the time. And each one of us is kind. And each one of us, there's a lot of us in 12-step programs. So anyone in a 12-step program is immersed in service, which is my version of action. An open door in general is service. Every time we answer the phone and we say yes to a friend in need, we're in service. So he spoke about it beautifully. And it's also, I open and love to every path, and I still contract when I hear a sense of fundamentalism in my, like, that's the one, like, when someone is so saying this is the only way, there's something inside of me that is not as forgiving of that as many other things. So he took a fair amount of time to discuss all the different paths and their value. And yes, one may take you deeper than the other, but if you don't have that meditative mindset before you start inquiry, the egoic mind's gonna going to hijack it real quick, right? And at least for all of us, we're in the world. We're not in a cave. And even someone like Ramana Maharshi said yes to everyone who came to visit him in service, right? He didn't step out into the world, but the world found him. So the third thing, which I've really been watching for myself, so this is why I'm saying it out loud, minds can powerfully delude. One of the questions I've been asking myself a lot, and I'm not going to go into detail here in a recording, but I've been noticing in general, in the projection of the world, this sense of a disconnect. Like what I hear said and how I see people living, there seems to be a disconnect. And so I recognize that if I'm seeing it projected in my world, then it's here in me. Where are my thoughts and my assumptions hiding the truth and creating a sense of disconnect in what I believe to be true and how I'm experiencing life. So I actually want to put it out to the group here. If you see that in me, if you see me saying one thing and then bitching about something that's like, call me out. We kindly call each other out and hold space for each other all the time, but I accept that this thinking, separate, dualistic mind is delusional. I do believe in many different places. A Course of Miracles will call it insane. Joel Goldsmith calls it nonsensical. So it exists, and I accept that it exists here. And I like to know when I'm not seeing something, but just accepting how often it can distort my experience of life is very useful for me, and it helps me laugh about it. Um, and this is one of my favorite lines. The problem is we think we know. And for me, one of the most powerful examples of that is Nazi Germany, just in general. A group of people really thought they knew. I'm not talking about evil, right, wrong, or different, but and that's also this fundamentalist view. There's a huge view, but there's also the more like, how is that working in me right now, right? But he just said it. The problem is we think we know. That's the only problem. We think. The only problem we think. And the guides especially have taught me that all truth is outside of thinking. That's a big one for me, is the understanding that the human collective consciousness was born in a state of duality, in a state of believing itself to be separate from the divine, the separate from all that is, and everything about the historical, our history as human beings arose from that one false thought. So everything has been colored by that until you step out of it. So the guides over and over and over again for me are telling me that where they're bringing us is outside of our current ability to comprehend. And I am really comforted by that. And I accept that. And so this statement, the problem is we think we know, fits perfectly in that understanding that since from a historical standpoint, as a human, we've never known what it was like to live without conflict. The guides continually state, war has existed since the first human threw a stone. And they're stating that as we rise above fear, conflict is gone, separation is gone, there is no war. We don't know what that feels like. There is no historical, energetic way. They said the absence of a current battle is not healing war. It's ceasefire is not letting go of conflict. It's something other. And then oh, I love the statement, the 10,000 waves are just water. That to me is a purely Taoist statement. This is the world of the 10,000 things, and it's all still just consciousness, right? So this statement that the 10,000 waves are just water, I love that relative to thought, object, beings, form, whatever. And it leads me into this kind of statement that I'm going to hand things over to Amy. Um, this understanding that ultimately you can't make consciousness an object. So you can see a thought, so it's an object. You can see an emotion, it's an object. You can see forms, they're objects. But if you keep asking, well, who sees that? What sees that? You get to this place of consciousness, which you cannot objectify. There's no me and consciousness from the state of consciousness, but we're not done there. Because where he pointed me anyway was, all right, at some point, and he said, a lot of people end there. But he said, okay, so there's consciousness, which has no separate parts. And somehow there's a belief in forms, whether they're thoughts or ideas or emotions or bodies or whatever. What happens when you bring that consciousness to the form? Where's the edge? And for whatever reason, Rana's the one that taught me about the borderland. And hanging in the borderland, hanging at the edge, allowing oneself to make no assumptions, but just to say, okay, I'm consciousness, and here I am, and from this space, right now, physical pain is arising. It's centered right here in an interesting place. And if I could just sit there and say, okay, I'm consciousness, and pain as a form is arising within consciousness, and I relax, and I'm just quietly inquiring, where does consciousness become the pain? Like, where is the edge? There is no edge. And being in that inquiry um, creates a new experience. There's a fear of being able to pay my bills. Okay, fear is arising. I was talking about it the other day. My neighbors were going nuts at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And I sat in that. All right, where is the I who sees another? Like the others were a form and consciousness, and releasing this sense that I was also an object, reacting to a different object. Like it all kind of just dissolved into something else. Just this invitation to rest in the borderland and allow that to guide us into the next action. And I am being guided into handing things over to Amy. Hello, my friend.
I love you too. I love us. I love these Thursday gatherings. This 3-hour discussion was really just a primer, I thought. We could probably spend a week on each hour because he really took us through a whole bunch of different things, beginning with the search for happiness and why the search for happiness is answered through the teachings. And I was so interested in this thing that I translated all of it into Word, and there are 43 pages of this translation. So I really want to hear what everybody else thought about it too. I'm interested in what moved you and what lit up for all of you. So I will be brief. I really appreciated him talking about the 3 different paths, the path of devotion, and why the path of devotion, as wonderful a path as it is, isn't really, it relies on faith. Um, and that's really great. But essentially, you can stay on that path for a long time because it relies on faith. And then the path of the mystic, which is just an amazing path and a path that I really feel I've been on. But the path of the mystic is also, it's a singular path in that it relies on the experience of the mystic. And there's a real gray area, in a sense, between the mystic and the psychotic, and how the mystical experience can be so powerful. And I really think Stanislav Grof and what is her name? The woman that he was married to, who did the research with him on just the mystical experiences of nervous breakdowns and postpartum depression and things like that, which were just groundbreaking and instrumental. But they are singular experiences and they can be profoundly powerful. But again, it's hard to share them. And then the path of knowledge, which is powerful because everyone can do self-inquiry. Everyone can have the experience on the path of knowledge. And I really, really appreciated his explaining that. And then he took us through this experience of the path of knowledge. And he actually tried to give us the experience of, am I the body? What exactly is it that's aware? And that was really helpful. That was what I call deconstructive self-inquiry. That's what I call that. So, am I the body? Am I the awareness of the body? You all get exactly what that is. I loved what he said about artificial intelligence and consciousness. I thought that was brilliant and really important. How simple consciousness is, how complex AI is, and it relies on this unbelievable complexity of putting things together. And yet consciousness is this simple, simple awareness. And we can't even begin to understand that with AI. There are something, what did he say, 352 scientific theories about consciousness, which he said essentially shows you we don't know what the hell we're talking about. So I thought that was really good. His description of matter and how, it's not really a problem of consciousness, it's a problem of matter. Because the more and more we look at matter, the more and more we realize we don't even know what matter is. It's mostly space, right? And I thought that was really, really lovely. And then I'll just end here. The whole thing, the story of the 10th person and how you count 1 through 9, but you miss the 10th, right? And the 10th is that self-awareness. And that's exactly right. I thought that was such a great way of describing what Cindy was talking about at the end, about how we can only see the objects, but we don't look at what is the subject. And we fail to count that. And that is actually the container in which the understanding and awareness of every single object arises. And so I'll leave it at that. And there's a whole lot more, but I want to hear what everybody else says. So I'll turn it over to Rana now. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you, Amy. Hey, Rana.
Hello.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here for the moment. This is my favorite quote. Be monk-like internally, even if your karma is in the kitchen. Right? His explanation that it doesn't matter what this form is emulating, experiencing as, appearing as that this enlightenment can be experienced. And I found the just the inquiry with him just wonderful. Brought me step by step through things. I found the mind saying, see, you know what this means. And I just loved that because that's okay too. Because if I had listened to him 5 years ago, I don't think that I would have received half of what I have. So seemingly in this creation of time, there is some seeming progress in clarity and understanding. And, and it's just that old. I loved the story of the two arrows. The first arrow gets you that it's real. Whatever's happening is happening. But the second arrow, that's produced by the thinking. And then thus the suffering of it, the clinging to it. And his reminder of he used the word right ego, but in here it comes up right mind, right-mindedness, like Buddhism, and and the wonderful freedom that I have to be able to seemingly choose that in any moment. I can be the knower of the thinker, right? I can see the thinker and I can then question the thought and then bring it all the way back to self-inquiry. There's been a number of times that I've had that experience where something in the world is really going on, and so there's just like this slow detachment as I realize, these thoughts are not mine. I don't have to follow them. They're not even true. There's not even really an other going on here, even though it feels so real, but he talked about that level of, progression where you just really trust what the wise ones are saying. And I do. I'm right there on the edge. I trust that the truth is true. I know from direct experience, if I take a moment in that pause and work that stuff backwards, it doesn't necessarily change the circumstance that's going on in the world, but the second arrow is not as painful. You know, a lot of love and understanding comes in there, and just most of the time, don't take yourself too darn seriously. How important is this? Well, now I know it's not even real. That first arrow is real, but what happens after that? And so I too, and just to end with the whole thing about thinking is not required to be conscious. I love the breakdown. I think, I think, therefore I am. Well, what happens when you're sleeping? You don't exist anymore? You know, what about the gaps in thought? Are you blipping in and out? The answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
And I love when we listen to these things, everybody has these cultural explanations, and I'm thrown back to lunch with Julie and Olivia, and Julie was asking these questions about karma and reincarnation. And the inclination I had was to look at her and say, nobody really knows, you know? And so in that, just to let go that, and just ease back into what if that is it, just to just be light about it. So thank you for letting me share. I'm grateful to be here, and I love you all.
Thank you. Hey, Melanie, do you know about reincarnation?
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Um, yeah, it was such a clear breakdown of Advaita Vedanta, and it really put, you know, Rupert and Francis Lucille kind of in a perspective, you could see where they fit in to the teachings there. And, so that was just so helpful because as you say, it's 3 hours, he really covered what it was all about because we usually get nips at, different parts of it. So that was so helpful. Um, I, he mentioned I've been, starting the teachings of the Inarama, and, I am that I am is kind of the mantra there. And he mentioned, I am that. And he said that was the ultimate reality. And I hadn't heard it expressed like that. That was always kind of a ambiguous phrase. And I had the mind has put different interpretations on that. And, he had the ultimate reality. That just gave a whole new depth to that mantra and that expression. So that was very helpful. Um, and just, I love the color. Remember when Andre talked about color and how I think he was talking about giving.
White and black.
Yeah, black is
Black being the absorbing all the colors and white being the reflection of all the colors,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So as white light, you give out everything. You are expressing, you're radiant, and that, we use that word radiant, but you can see how white light is radiant because it's giving out all its colors to make a beautiful world for us. So I don't know, I love that metaphor. And since this was right after we did, Helen Hamilton's, I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition because it struck me when he was talking about, she talks so much about just, awareness and we as awareness, just the seeing and the listening and everything is happening within us, but we are that which is observing. We're not, and she also talked about we don't interact with form. We are, and it's hard to really grasp that. But he mentioned about ignorance. Reality is totally free of appearance. He says reality is totally free of appearance. So it's like the illusion is not, oh, how can, I don't know. The self doesn't interact with the form. So there's no link between appearance and illusion and reality. The mind wants to see a connection all the time. And I don't know, I'm just throwing these ideas out because I was struggling with this, or trying to capture, so everything that is appearing is just appearing. We want to put a purpose and a sequence to everything, but it's just arising now, right? And we are that which is now. I'm getting into William's theme here. But anyway, that really got me taking a deep dive into her teachings and seeing how they kind of, were in part, saying kind of the same thing. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
We're the same. I have Linda Yamin who came in here. Was certified by Helen, whatever that means,
Yes,
whatever
Linda.
the
Yeah.
verbiage. She said that in these intimate deep dives with Helen, they go through the Vasista Yoga and the Bhagavad Gita and these traditions. So even though Helen is not a teacher of that, she studies that with her students. So and this idea of consciousness um, existing without thought is something that I think I've heard Regina talk about it, but I think I really, as I was listening, it's Helen that's really talked about this idea that I still am between the thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So um, consciousness does not require form to be.
Yes. Even in deep sleep, he made that point too. That deep sleep's just, there's still awareness there. It's the absence. You're aware of absence. See, I hadn't heard that was new to me. I like that.
Oh, and I've heard Regina talk about how if you've woken up after a really good night's sleep, how do you know you've had a really good night's sleep?
Right. Yeah. That's good.
And the first dozen times I've heard her talk about that, it just confused me. But the quieter my system has gotten, the deeper the understanding. Like consciousness knows that the form, when it arises into experience again, is coming in well rested and not into this experience, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So, on some level outside of this body mind form, the awareness of the experience exists.
Mm. And the whole reincarnation, somehow I just, I always see it as stories playing out within awareness. You know, it's just, if we are that awareness, awareness doesn't reincarnate. And if that's who we are, it's just take the story being replayed in different ways. That's the only way I can reconcile that sense of reincarnation, which in the Indian culture, he says is just ACIM, to their culture, is, and with the sense that there's only one ultimate reality that never is changeless and never, you know, it's just the form coming through.
Yeah, it's a different conversation for me. Where I am right now with it is it's a huge part of Kabbalah, multiple lifetimes, believe it or not. It's a huge part of the yogic tradition. And those 2 points alone, these ancient traditions, means that there's something there that I don't understand. And so I now hesitate to reject it.
Yeah. Well, don't knowing is good, like Ron is saying.
Yeah. But I've noticed that there's a real difference between rejecting something and allowing myself to not understand and to ask.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sandra, you said you loved this podcast. I'd love to hear why or what you received from it while we're waiting for the next official hand to go up.
Well, hello everyone. It's good to see you. I love connecting with you. That's for me the highlight of all of this. All the words that are said are so beautiful, and everything was very informative. I loved listening for 3 hours. Amy, I didn't know you could print it out in some way. I kept stopping and writing down what they were saying, what he was saying. Would have been a lot easier to print it.
I didn't know either, Sandra, and I so wanted to get everything that I just Googled it and figured it out, which is very
Okay.
unlike me because I am not a technical person at all.
Anyway, it took me hours to watch this because I kept stopping, backing up, saying, I want to write down that sentence. So, um, many of the things that you've already said are the things that helped me. Um, I'll mention two. First, when he described the three different paradigms, he called them paradigms of paths. And yes, Amy, I liked what he said. It helped me because I was always getting confused with them. Um, I'm sure I heard it before, but he was so clear, so simply clear, so calmly, patiently clear. I just I felt him. I don't know how to, I felt him. I don't know if you felt him. And for me, I've talked about the experiences I've had, and he talked about the limitations of several of the paths, as Amy pointed out. And yet, the, the direct experience he called mystics. I don't consider myself a mystic in any way. I just know the direct experiences I've had are so overpowering of any other learning that I'm always trying to make the learning fit in to these experiences. I don't really need to do that. Um, I think it was at the very end that he talked about how you need devotion, you need love, you need direct experience, you need all of it. And so learning the non-dual path or the direct path has been very helpful, but it's been necessary but not adequate to describe my experiences. So I liked what he said about that. The other big thing to me is something I've heard Helen Hamilton said, but it's not really I haven't heard it highlighted. I'm just going to say it wasn't highlighted. It probably is highlighted, but I haven't heard it highlighted when I listen to teachers like Francis Lucille or even Jenny Beale or Rupert. But he highlighted it for me. Or maybe I was just ready to hear it, which is probably more likely. And that was after he did all this explanation and took us through what he called deconstructing who you are and all of that, which I've done that before with Rupert, with, Jenny. It's all, and I get it. But then he said, that's where the Buddhists stop. And I thought that was interesting. And he said, then he had to go, and he had this word, but. But, and I thought, Alice always tells me, watch out for the earbuds. And I do. But he said, I can't deny my own existence here as a body. And I stopped that, rewound, and then I had to write it back down again. And he goes, what is it? What am I? And he said, there's bare consciousness. And I think he said that's the beginning of the Vedanta. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I've never just studied any of these Eastern philosophies or religions, but he said that's bare consciousness. And then he said, how do they interact this form with this bare consciousness? And this is what lit me up because I've never been able to really distinguish the two, even through the deconstructing. And what he said was, they're not different, they're the same. I had to hit pause and rewind and write that down because I don't know if he was using the word interact to explain it, because Helen does say there's no interaction, but that's not my experience. So when he said they are all of this, the objective world and the bare consciousness, the pure consciousness, all of it is you. Which to me feels so right. I can't explain why it feels right. And he says that's the ultimate non-duality. That's what I heard him say, that it's all one. And I love that. It's all one. I mean, I spent time thinking I was this way, just this individual person going about in the world, trying to do the best I could, trying to be good, always trying to be good. And then I'll swing the other way. I'm not a person, I'm just pure consciousness. And then back to all of it is the same. So maybe it doesn't need to interact or use that word. I don't know. But his question was, how do they interact? And then he said, consciousness is appearing and experiencing as self. Nothing in the universe is separate from you. And that was just that's what the non-dual teachers say all the time. Nothing is separate. And yet we get this experience, this beautiful experience, this beautiful experience. It's beyond description. It's quite amazing, awesome, wondrous. And he just was so, I can't think of the word that's good enough. He was so gently certain. And I felt his love. And so there's many more things. I mean, I have pages and pages. I'm sure you're not interested in hearing my pages and pages. Didn't
Sure.
really understand. One thing I did not understand that I did listen to a couple of times, and I think I'm going to try to do some printing. I might call you Amy and ask how to do that. But the hard problem of consciousness. But even though I didn't follow all that, I thought it doesn't matter. I don't need to understand that. Um, in the end, I felt like he was describing how important the path of devotion and love is. And that's the part I don't usually hear from the non-dual teachers. And so looks like a lot of hands got raised while I was talking. I can't wait to hear from each of you. And every time I talk, I want to be sure to say, I don't know if this is right, what I'm saying. I really don't know. I just know this is what comes forward to say in this time and in this place and in this holy moment, these holy moments that we get to have together, each and every beautiful moment. So I do remember something Lonnie said, and I wrote it down, and it has helped me, Lonnie. So I want to thank you for it. She said, I am not only a body. And that makes the bridge for me. Not only a body. I'm so
I'd
much
like,
more than that, And but I can't deny that I'm a body. I'm expressing as a body anyway, at least for this moment. Who knows where I'll be tomorrow? Love you all.
before I hand things over to Amy and then Alka, because I'm pretty sure it was Alka's hand that went up and down. Um, I just want to, what helps me with something that you just said is that all words by definition are dualistic and they're symbols upon symbols. And so they have within them a distortion, and yet they're still very, very useful. They're
Yes,
points.
and that thank you for saying that because I think that's why I know that. That's why I'm so often hesitant to speak what's bubbling up. And I've learned to just let it. And I
We're
don't,
having a dualistic experience. So
yes,
we,
yes.
dedicate our words to move us into the experience of more love, more light, and we allow them to flow, knowing that they're not true, but they're very, very useful, right? They're
Yes.
not true in the way that everything that's dualistic has a distortion involved in it. That's all. That doesn't make them less useful.
That's why I love the word mystical because it doesn't try to, it acknowledges, just the word itself, I think, acknowledges that it's not totally explainable and
Yeah.
that there isn't a way to make an outline or draw a map of it.
Hey, Amy.
I'm not going to say much because I want to hear other people. I wanted to emphasize that the mind is a filter. The brain is a filter and the mind is a filter. And so everything that we think is filtered through this biological mechanism that is not all that it is. So it's okay to say, I am the body, and I'm more than the body, but I think it's really important to recognize I am not the body. It is not what I am. It cannot contain me. It is a veil I'm looking through, right? That's all it is. And it's an amazing experience, but it's not what I am. So I just want to emphasize that and I'll shut up.
The question that arose for me this morning as the body was being so loud was, in what way is this sense of a body mind limiting who I am right now? Can this body mind experience limit who I am? And the recognition that it didn't, as loud as it was getting, it couldn't contain or limit me was extraordinary to realize that no matter what the body was going through, it could not limit who I was.
It does a really good job of veiling. It does a fantastic job because it was created by genius. So just that's it.
Hi, Alka. Hands going up and down like that. The decision that somebody else's voice is more important or whatever it is, it's doesn't work here.
Okay. Um, well, I've been listening to Swami Sarvapriyananda for years because he just makes things so clear. I haven't finished listening to it, but the point, when I was listening to all of you discussing about the body, etc., I just wanted to speak about my own experience. So when my mother-in-law died, and I wasn't there when she was dying, but when she died, but I was there a few days before. And as her body became less responsive, the vibrations in the room went up. At which point I realized that, it's being held by spirit, and when it doesn't need it, it drops it like meat puppet or whatever. But then I sat with this inquiry, and it was annoying. It was not, it was annoying that came to me that while we are alive, while the spirit needs us, every cell in this body is animated by the divine spirit. And that's why it's so special. The mind is something else. I would be very careful about listening to the mind, but body has its own intelligence because it's being animated by this divine, and I sat there, and when this knowing came, the experience of my, not inside my body, because, but the experience of this body being held by spirit was, I could feel the divinity along with outside, inside, everywhere. And that's why this is the experience I've had now. I've always maintained that body is important, but this was my experience. So I just wanted to talk about that.
Thank you. And I'd like to, this is the second time, Alka, we found a teacher kind of by accident, or nothing's by accident, that you said, I've been studying them for years. So if there are other, or I visit, if there are other teachers along these lines that you could introduce us to, you don't have to facilitate unless you want to, but send me their names for their podcasts. You don't have to do it right now, but
I know. He's the one I've been following for a long time because he just makes everything so clear. And,
well,
okay, I will stop now.
if somebody else comes up, let us know.
I will.
Hey, William.
Good morning, everyone. All I seem to really know is what I'm not, and I love that. And who I am is I don't know. The permission to just be in the moment of now. And something about that, those three letters, or the three letters one, or. What I see more and more is I spend most of all my life in this story. The stories keep convoluting into something else. And I love listening to the stories here because it seems like other people have such wonderful descriptive ways of speaking and painting those pictures. It's like I feel the painting of their pictures, and oftentimes I don't even hear the words, but the energy and what I can just see it. And I feel that the phrase in lesson 189, just be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. And when I read, you are that, or I am that, no, that's not who I am, not that, not that, not that, not that. So I just see that oneness is what's left when I'm not everything. So everything, nothing. So, I get lost in words, but I see that some stories get me closer and closer and closer. But the oneness, I never know it really because I'm not that, but that's who I am. It's just that oneness. And sometimes I have this story of I'm this little weed or salt grain of sand, and there's this beautiful tree. It's okay, because we're all one, we're all one, we're all one. And so now that's what I get from now. Forget this course, forget the words, forget everything. And that's so simple just now. And I want to finish with this. I've said it before. I'm part of a Bible study group which brings up so many past stories of resistance and fear and you name it. But it's such an opportunity to just be in the eyes and listening to these people who, oh, this is it. Oh, this is it. I know this is it. And then for me to, it's kind of, I have to melt into the oneness and allow them to be that beautiful way of whatever they're describing. And then just, I don't know, I'm just aware. What does that mean? Even the word isn't, let go of that word too. What's beyond that word? And the now is beyond the awareness, the consciousness. It just keeps going. I don't have to know because I don't know, but I know something in me knows the oneness. I just know it. So, see, and that's what I love about when I stop talking, I'm now and I'm home. So it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what you say. And yet it's wonderful because I love listening. So isn't it nice that we don't have to do anything and we are all one. We are all one. Thank you. I just love you all.
That hour, I felt like it just started and now it's over. We meet again at an open door in just under 3 hours for Advaita in ACIM. So if you can make it, I am certain Amy would love to have you there, as would everybody else who comes. And then Divine Union tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. So next week, Livy is facilitating the meeting. The week after that, it's Lonnie. The week after that, it's Melanie. So we're going to have a lot of different voices and viewpoints and ways to be with all of this. I love us so much.